Frank worked his entire career in logistics, 41 years. Missed his kids' school plays, skipped vacations, ate lunch at his desk so many times that his keyboard had crumbs older than most interns. And on his last day, he stood in front of his coworkers, held up a glass of cheap champagne and said, "I will never set an alarm clock again." That was 18 months ago. Last Tuesday, Frank set an alarm for 6:15 a.m., not because he had somewhere to be, but because without it, he was sleeping until noon, eating breakfast at 2 p.m., and his wife Linda had started referring to him as the furniture. Frank is not enjoying retirement. Frank is surviving it. And if you think Frank is an outlier, buckle up, because what I'm about to tell you is going to change how you think about the so-called golden years. This isn't a video about running out of money. Today, we're going deeper into the stuff nobody puts in the retirement brochure. Let's get into it. Number 1, the marriage bomb. Here's something the retirement planning industry conveniently ignores. You're not retiring alone. If you're married or in a long-term relationship, you're retiring with another human being. A human being who, for the last 30 or 40 years, had roughly 8 to 10 hours a day where you were not in the same room. And now you're both home, all day, every day, together. And it is wrecking marriages at an alarming rate. In Japan, they actually have a term for this. It's called retired husband syndrome. It was identified by a physician who noticed that wives of newly retired men were showing up with stress-related illnesses, headaches, stomach ulcers, rashes, depression at a dramatically higher rate. The cause? Their husbands were suddenly home all day, following them around the house, criticizing how they load the dishwasher, and offering unsolicited opinions about the grocery list. And before you think this is just a Japan thing, it's not. In the United States, the divorce rate among adults 50 and older has roughly doubled since the 1990s. Researchers call them gray divorces, and retirement is one of the leading triggers. Couples who spent decades functioning as a team with separate daily lives suddenly find themselves staring across the kitchen table with nothing in common except a mortgage and a shared Netflix password. One retired couple I read about, both in their mid-60s, told a counselor that they had run out of things to talk about within the first 3 months of retirement. 3 months! That's less time than most people spend deciding on a couch. And it's not just the big stuff that causes friction. It's the tiny, mind-numbing, day-to-day nonsense. It's the thermostat wars. It's the argument about whether the dishwasher needs to be loaded a specific way. Spoiler alert, it does, and your way is wrong. It's the fact that one person wants to eat lunch at 11:30 and the other doesn't get hungry until 1 o'clock. And somehow, this becomes a 30-minute negotiation every single day. These are things that never mattered when you were both out of the house. Now they're the center of your universe. I read a survey where retired couples were asked to name their biggest source of daily conflict. The number one answer wasn't money. It wasn't health. It was being in each other's space too much. That's it. Just too much togetherness. 40 years of marriage, survived job losses, raised kids, weathered recessions, and the thing that finally cracks the foundation is both of you being home on a Wednesday afternoon with nowhere to go. The problem isn't that these people don't love each other. The problem is that work acted as a buffer. It gave each person their own world, their own stories to bring home, their own space to breathe. Remove that buffer, and you're left with 2 people who have to learn how to coexist for 16 waking hours a day, something they literally never had to do before. And nobody prepares for this. You'll spend 6 months with a financial advisor building a withdrawal strategy, but 0 minutes discussing what happens when you and your spouse are suddenly roommates with no curriculum. Number 2, the place you can't escape. Let's talk about the geographic trap, because this one is brutal and it happens all the time. Here's the classic scenario. You're 58, you're burned out, you start Googling best places to retire, and within 6 weeks you've sold your house, left the city where you had friends and family and a life, and moved to some sunny town in Florida or Arizona or the Carolinas because a magazine said it was the #1 retirement destination in America. Congratulations! Now you live somewhere where you know absolutely no one, the nearest Target is 40 minutes away, and your social life consists of waving at the neighbor who walks his dog past your driveway at 7 a.m. A study from the National Association of Realtors found that something like 1 in 3 people who make a major move in retirement end up regretting it within the first 2 years. 1 in 3.
That's a devastating number when you consider that these people uprooted their entire lives based on a fantasy. And the trap is that once you've made the move, it's incredibly hard to undo. You sold your old house, probably at a price you can't afford to buy back into. You've already furnished the new place. You've already told everyone how great it is. Nobody wants to be the person who calls their kids and says, "Hey, so the dream house in Scottsdale? It's actually kind of terrible, and I haven't made a single friend in 8 months." So they stay. They gut it out. They sit in their beautiful new home that they chose specifically for retirement, and they feel completely stuck. Here's what makes this worse. The community you left behind, it moved on without you. Your friends adjusted. Your old neighbors have new neighbors. The church group filled your seat. Going back doesn't mean going home. It means starting over again, which is the exact thing you were trying to avoid by leaving in the first place. You're stuck in the new place and locked out of the old one. That's not a move. That's a trap with a pool on a palm tree. The mistake isn't wanting to live somewhere warm. The mistake is making the biggest real estate decision of your life based on weather and cost of living and totally ignoring proximity to people who actually matter to you. Because a cheap house in paradise is still a prison if you're eating dinner alone every night. The structure collapse. This one flies under the radar, but it might be the most destructive of all. Human beings are creatures of structure. Your entire adult life was organized for you. You woke up at a certain time, you commuted, you had meetings, deadlines, lunch breaks, quitting time. Weekdays had a shape, weekends with a reward, holidays with a highlight. Every single day had a rhythm, and even if you hated that rhythm, your brain was dependent on it. Retirement obliterates that structure overnight, and what most people don't realize is that the freedom they fantasized about, the open calendar, the no obligations, the I can do whatever I want, actually feels terrifying when it arrives. There's a reason that retirees consistently report that the first thing they miss about work isn't the paycheck, isn't the status, isn't even the people. It's the routine, the predictability, the knowledge that Thursday has a shape and Friday has an end. Without that scaffolding, days become this weird, soupy blur where you can't tell if it's been 3 hours or 7 since you woke up. I heard a retired teacher describe it perfectly. She said, "For 30 years, every minute of my day had a purpose. Then, on day 1 of retirement, I stood in my living room at 8 a.m. and literally asked myself out loud, 'Now what?' And I didn't have an answer. For the first time in my adult life, nobody needed me to be anywhere." That's not freedom, that's vertigo. Psychologists who study retirement adjustment call this temporal disorientation. It's the unsettling experience of not knowing what day it is, not because you have memory problems, because every day feels exactly the same. Tuesday is Wednesday is Saturday is nothing. There are no milestones, no deadlines, no urgency, just a flat, unbroken horizon of time. And here's where it gets interesting. Research on retired adults shows that retirees who maintain some form of daily structure, even a loose one, report significantly higher satisfaction and lower rates of depression than those who wing it. It's not about being busy, it's about having a framework, a reason to distinguish today from yesterday. One researcher compared it to removing the banks from a river. The water doesn't flow better, it just spreads out into a swamp. Structure is the riverbank. Without it, your days don't become expansive, they become shapeless. The expectation hangover. There's a phenomenon in psychology called an arrival fallacy. It's the false belief that once you reach a certain goal, you'll be permanently happy. And retirement might be the single biggest arrival fallacy in American life. You've been told since you were in your 20s that retirement is the destination, it's the pot of gold. Everything you're grinding for is leading to this one magical moment when you stop working and your real life begins. So when you get there and it doesn't feel magical, when it feels confusing or flat or even disappointing, you don't just feel unhappy, you feel guilty for feeling unhappy. Because you got the thing everyone wants. And if you're not happy now, what does that say about you?
This guilt is a trap all by itself. Retirees who struggle often refuse to talk about it because they feel like they don't have the right to complain. They look at people still grinding through their careers and think, I should be grateful, I should be thrilled, what's wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with them. They just bought into a myth. The myth that happiness is a destination rather than a practice, that the absence of work automatically equals the presence of joy. It doesn't. Joy has to be actively built, and retirement doesn't build it for you, it just gives you the raw materials and says, good luck. The retirees who crash the hardest are often the ones who were the most excited to retire. They had the countdown clocks, they had the bucket lists, they had the vision boards, and when reality didn't match the vision, the gap between expectation and experience felt like a betrayal. 5. the invisible cage of caretaking. Here's one that almost never gets talked about in retirement content, and it's massive. A significant number of retirees, particularly women, but increasingly men too, retire only to become immediately full-time caregivers for aging parents, for grandchildren, for a spouse with health issues. According to AARP, roughly 1 in 5 Americans are unpaid caregivers, and a disproportionate number of them are over 50. Many of these people retired expecting freedom and instead walked straight into the most demanding, emotionally exhausting job of their lives with no pay, no breaks, no PTO, and no retirement party at the end of it. And unlike a job, you can't quit caregiving. You can't hand in your notice and say, "I'm done, find someone else," because the someone else is your mother or your husband or your grandkid whose parents can't afford childcare. These retirees are trapped in a very literal sense. They traded one set of obligations for another, except the new obligations come with a side of grief, medical stress, and the knowledge that this could go on for years or decades. The cruelest part is that nobody validates this experience. Society celebrates retirees who travel and take up painting and learn Italian. Nobody throws a parade for the 67-year-old who spends her days managing her husband's dialysis schedule, but she's just as retired. She just got a very different version of it. All right, I didn't bring you this far just to leave you in a pit of existential dread. Let's talk about the moves that actually help. First, if you're married, have the uncomfortable conversation before you retire. Not about money, about space, about expectations. Couples who negotiate this stuff in advance have dramatically better outcomes than those who just assume it'll work itself out. It won't. Talk about it now. Second, do not make a major geographic move in the first year of retirement. Give yourself at least 12 months to settle into your new identity before you rip up your roots. Rent before you buy. Visit in the off-season. Talk to people who actually live there full-time, not just vacationers. Your future self will thank you. Third, build your week before you need it. Create a loose structure with recurring anchors, a gym session, a volunteer shift, a regular meetup, a class. Not to stay busy, to stay oriented. Your brain needs landmarks even when your calendar doesn't require them. Fourth, expect the arrival of fallacy and plan around it. Know going in that the first 6 months of retirement might feel strange, anticlimactic, or even sad. That's normal. That doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. It means you're human, and you just went through one of the biggest transitions of your adult life. Give yourself grace and give yourself a plan. And fifth, if you're heading into a caretaking role, set boundaries early and get help. You are not a bad person for needing respite care, for hiring help, for saying, "I need a break." Burning yourself out to take care of someone else doesn't make you a hero. It makes you the next patient. Look into your local area agency on aging. Look into adult day programs. Look into literally anything that gives you 4 hours a week to be a person and not just a caregiver. You earned this retirement too. Don't let it disappear entirely into someone else's needs without at least carving out a corner for yourself. Retirement isn't a reward for decades of work. It's a transition into a completely different way of living. And transitions, all of them, good and bad, come with friction, confusion, and a period where nothing feels quite right. The career you built took decades of intentional effort. Your retirement deserves the same. So whether you're 5 years out, 5 months out, or already sitting in that kitchen wondering what happened, know this: the trap has a door. You just have to be willing to build it yourself. I want to hear from you. Are you retired and feeling this? Are you planning for retirement and rethinking things? Let me know below. I'll catch you in the next one.